Hello, and welcome to Psych Sessions, conversations about teaching and stuff. I am Eric Landrum, along with Garth Neufeld, your podcast hosts. As the name implies, we center on conversations about teaching, but we often veer into other interesting topics, which is the end stuff. This is episode number 137, where Garth had the opportunity to interview Ken Carter from the Oxford College of Emory University in Oxford, Georgia. Now, before you hear the interview, please allow me to share some listening tips and some of my favorite moments. Ken Carter is a joy to listen to. There, I said it. I know that many of you heard him at Night Top 2022, and some of you will likely hear him at Tip Northwest. And I'm so glad that Garth and Ken had the opportunity to sit down together and chat in person. What a delight to get to know Ken just a little bit better through this interview. Ken is a graduate of the University of Michigan, where he earned his PhD in clinical psychology. He's just a fascinating character in every possible way. His first job was at the CDC as a disease detective. How cool is that? He did a lot of work in graduate school. Chris Peterson from Positive Psychology was his mentor, so he has a very much that positive psychology slant in his perceptions. He talked a couple of different times in the interview about gratitude letters that he actually writes to people from his past and mentors and such. I really enjoyed their discussion about social media and the impact that it's played. And Ken has made some really interesting decisions, very purposeful and thoughtful decisions about social media. I encourage you to listen for that. I don't want to give everything away in this introduction. They also had a really thoughtful and in-depth conversation about Ken's prolific textbook authoring skills. He has written multiple psychology textbooks, as well as a trade textbook about thrill seeking. And if you've been on Twitter, I remember when I was on Twitter, I saw advertisements for that. And I remember seeing the cover about the book cover for his thrill seeking book. And it's really interesting to hear about the work ethic and the planning, and in some cases the co-author, the skills and abilities that it takes to do that, and his workflow. And so anybody who's ever thought about what it takes to write and the challenges, and if you thought that maybe you couldn't do it, I think Ken's story is inspirational, and it's definitely worth listening to in that aspect. I always appreciate when folks are willing to share a little bit about their background. And so Ken shares some of his background about growing up in South Carolina, first-generation college student. I also really enjoyed listening to him talk about his interaction with speech and debate in high school, because that was such an important part of my own high school experiences. And it actually helped him overcome some things, such as stuttering as a child. And I'm reminded in listening to Ken's story just how important teachers can be in both a positive and negative way, not only helping him overcome through speech and debate, but also Ken shares a story about how a teacher told him that he wasn't going to be a good writer, or that he wasn't a good writer, and how it would be refreshing, or maybe, I don't know, maybe Ken doesn't think this way, but I like to think that if whatever grade school teacher told Ken wasn't going to turn out to be a good writer, it'd be kind of nice if that teacher saw what Ken has accomplished today. Again, those are my words, not Ken's. I don't think he's as mean as I am, but that's another story for another podcast. Ken's just incredibly impressive, incredibly generous. He gets a second master's degree in clinical psychopharmacology in the year 2000. He's just a teacher and a learner and curious about the world, and just a joy to listen to. Garth and Ken ended talking a little bit about Night Top, and I liked Ken's quote here: "Night Top is just like a big intellectual hug." There's so much more that I haven't talked about here, and I think our listeners are going to be just so excited to learn more about Ken Carter. So please enjoy.
I am here with Dr. Ken Carter. Do you go with Ken or Kenneth?
Ken.
Professionally, it's Kenneth on things,
It shows
isn't
up
it?
Kenneth sometimes.
All right. And let me get this right. Oxford College of Emory University.
Perfect.
Wow, good for me.
Yeah.
Now, that's kind of a unique name for an institution. Can you just tell us a little bit about it?
Well, Oxford's a really kind of unique place. It's a 2-year school. Students apply directly to Oxford College, and then after those 2 years, they continue on to either Emory College, the business school, or the nursing school. They don't have to reapply to any of those places. So we call it sort of a liberal arts intensive environment. They can do a lot of the foundational courses at Oxford. Largest classes we have there are 28 students.
Wow.
And so lots of interaction with faculty, lots of experiential learning, travel courses, a campus. It's a more historic campus is the original campus of the university. And then their junior year, they sort of hit the ground running on their other majors.
Is it officially a community college?
Not really.
No?
Not really. Because students, well, they do get an AA after that, but we don't really have any students that are there just for Oxford. They're there to start at Oxford and then continue on at one of those 3 places. And every now and then we'll get someone that will transfer from Oxford to another university.
Is there another institution that has this model?
I think there may be 3 others that do something similar.
Okay.
But it's we say it's the best of like a small liberal arts college and a large research university, well, moderate sized research university.
Right. So it's everybody comes in the same way into those first 2 years, or can you go straight to Emory?
You can go straight to Emory College. You can apply directly to Emory College and have all 4 years at Emory College, or you can apply to Oxford and then plan to continue to Emory College, nursing school, or business school. Yeah.
Okay. And that's Emory University.
Yeah. So that's the Emory University part. So Emory College doesn't call themselves Emory College of Emory University, but technically they are Emory College of Emory University.
Okay. Fascinating. Okay, so...
and I went to Emory as an undergraduate.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I went to Oxford as an undergrad, then to Emory.
No way. And then you returned home. That's
cool.
And then
I returned to the... Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to get into all that, but I want to talk about, so I know of you, I think at, Psych 1 this year. Did you do a teaching presentation?
I did a teaching presentation on, what to do about the prison study.
Yes. Okay. I'll tell you what, the reason why I'm so interested to talk to you, and why, by the way, I invited Ken to be a keynote speaker at TIP Northwest this spring. We're going to be in person. I mean, fingers crossed, right?
Yeah.
But part of the reason was I saw you give a talk, and it was a recorded talk, and it was short.
Yeah.
But I saw you give a talk, and then today I saw you give another teaching demo. Mm-hmm. We're at NITOP right now, and you have... I don't know. You have something about you that really, I just want to tell you, you have something about you that is like, it's really engaging. It's very nice to hear you talk. The way that you speak really engages audiences. And I felt it when I was watching from my home.
Wow.
When you were doing that video thing. So anyway, you got something special. Do you know what that is?
I have no idea. Okay. The funny thing was right before I was thinking like, I don't know if I never feel as confident as I want to.
Yeah, sure.
But it always feels nice to hear. It feels nice to hear that.
And I don't know that actually in the teaching of psychology world, I think we actually do share that with each other.
Yeah.
In academia, I'm not sure how much that gets shared. I'm not sure if we're going to our neighbors' offices and saying, hey, you know what? You're a great math teacher or whatever, right? Or, hey, I observed your class and you're just like, you're really good at what you do. But it's cool to watch somebody do something that they're really good at.
Oh, wow.
So,
Thank you for saying that.
Of course.
The cool thing about at Oxford, one of the differences between Oxford College and Emory College is that we're really focused on teaching. So teaching is a central thing we do. And so we do get some of that back and forth, which makes it a really beautiful place to cultivate that passion for teaching. Where did you
learn to teach? I'm jumping in right into the middle of the timeline here, which is not great for listeners, but I'll pop us out. So where did you learn to teach? Are you looking for more affordable, quality materials for your intro psych students? Check out Hawks Learning's mastery-based courseware and texts. These materials introduce foundational psychology and research concepts that inspire students of all majors to think more critically about the world around them.
Students and instructors benefit from built-in support features like error-specific feedback, explanatory videos, and detailed progress reports. Explore Hawks Learning's mastery-based intro psych materials, available to students for as low as $43, and free chapter projects and example videos exclusively for Psych Sessions listeners at www.hawkslearning.com/psych sessions. Again, that's www.hawkslearning.com/psych sessions.
Where did I learn to teach? That's a really good question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. So I went to graduate school, University of Michigan. I had a fellowship, so I didn't have to be a TA. So I never got any graduate training in teaching. I never taught a course when I was in graduate school.
Wow. Yeah.
But my PhD is in clinical psych. So I feel like a lot of what I do as a clinician, it feels like teaching too, right?
Yeah.
And so my first job out of grad school was at the CDC, as one of those disease detectives. I was, a behavioral epidemiologist, like pure researchy job. And it wasn't for me. And so they reached out to me from Oxford to teach, but I hadn't really ever taught before. And so I feel like I have mentors that were great teachers. And I feel like maybe I got it from that. One of my mentors in graduate school was Chris Peterson, and he always taught me to try to explain things in a way that can be understood. So I think maybe it comes from that.
And that was at University of Michigan.
Yeah.
And they have a great teaching tradition because Bill McKeechee was there. You know Bill.
Yes,
his name. Yeah.
I knew him when I was at Michigan. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
Did you know him? Had you met him?
I met him at Michigan.
Was he retired yet at that point?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I graduated from Michigan in 93, so he was still there. Yeah.
Okay.
So the look, because you can't see Garth's look on his face, he's trying to calculate how old I am.
I am. Oh, you've done well, sir. What are you eating?
I picked my parents very carefully.
Okay. Sorry, I'm still trying to do the math. All right, I got to stop that. We can do that afterwards. Okay, so Bill McKeechee was there, author of Teaching Tips, and left a great teaching legacy there.
Absolutely.
So, your mentor, or your mentor there, what was his name again?
Chris Peterson.
Chris Peterson. Yeah. That's it. Chris is male. Chris
right,
guy.
Right.
Okay.
Like Chris, like if Peterson and Seligman. Yeah. They worked at attributional style questionnaire. That's Chris. Yeah. Positive psychology. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. And so has Chris been there for a long time?
He had, but he passed away maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And it sort of hit me because when you think about that person as being sort of your academic sort of lineage in some ways. Right. And so, but he was a great guy. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't quite got there yet in my career where these mentors are, but I have watched, like my friend Jane Hallinan, Bill McKeechee was her mentor. And so I think it's really interesting to get to that stage of career where you do see people start to retire.
Right. And
then kind of leave the teaching world because we see in this tight-knit community, we do see each other a lot.
Yeah.
Eric and I were just talking. Eric's my podcast partner, and we were talking about on New Year's Day, we were talking about how it's shocking because just by numbers, every time, like every once in a while, it's going to be somebody in the community who is young, right? Yeah. Like Scott Lilienfeld last year or 2 years ago,
right?
Or whatever
Scott,
it was.
And I knew Scott. We would do stuff together, and
you guys would like professionally, you'd work on stuff, and
no, just like lunches and drinks.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So you've experienced some loss. That's interesting.
And so one of the things I've been doing, you've heard about like people writing these like gratitude letters. And so I've started reaching out to some of my mentors from grad school and college, just sort of letting them know, hey, you had a really big impact on me.
Oh, that's so good.
And it feels great. Yeah, it feels great.
I have my students do that in intro psych and they love it. And I tell them they can choose to send it or not. Yeah. Most of them do. Do you do them? Do you have them like handwrite these things, or do you have like?
I've had them do it before, but mostly it's been me doing
it's your-
it.
yes,
Doing
you're
it. So
doing it, yeah.
I'm reaching out to people, just a couple of sentences in an email to say, "Hey, I want to make sure you know that I still remember this thing you did for me."
Yeah.
And it means a lot to me.
It's interesting. I have these two mentors that stick out to my mind. A high school English teacher named Rick Clark, and then in graduate school, a guy named Kevin Reimer. And I always mean to do that. And in fact, I actually would like to have them on. I would have to track down Rick Clark because high school from how long ago? I mean, Then you're looking into like, where is he? How old is he?
Right.
Yeah.
And for a while, because I'm not on Facebook anymore, but I used to be on Facebook, and it was easier to find people.
Yeah.
And you were like, oh, yeah, I can reach out to them later. And then people are leaving social networks, so it gets harder to reach out to people.
Yeah.
And then eventually, they're not going to be there.
That's right. What led to you getting off Facebook, if you don't mind my asking?
So I kept track of how many times I went on Facebook that I left with positive feelings versus negative feelings.
Interesting.
And I did it for about 2 weeks. It's very like CBT kind of thing to do. And then I thought, I usually leave with a negative feeling. Like, why am I doing this to myself?
Yeah.
And so I just turned off my account, and before I knew it, it had been 2 years.
Yeah.
And then I just deleted it. I'm still on Twitter.
Right. Does Twitter? I mean, Twitter is in some ways like more hostile than Facebook.
But if you fill your feed with like my feed on Twitter is pretty well curated.
Yeah.
And so I'll get. I'll see you on Twitter, and I'll see the there is no cat in this photo. It's my newest thing I added, which is kind of like Where's Waldo for cats.
Yeah.
And so if you put enough of that kind of stuff in there, and I make sure I leave with those positive vibes.
Yeah.
And if a couple of people and I have negative, I'll mute them or I'll block them.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's for me.
So if you block someone, does that block their comments on other people's things as well? Like
if they respond to somebody else, you won't see their comment.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I don't leave Twitter with the greatest feeling, honestly. And yeah. So wait, are you doing the cat stuff? Is that you doing it?
Oh, that's not me doing it.
You're
but
just
I put it in.
In your feed.
I follow it. So
Okay.
so it'll be people posting on whatever, and then there is no cat in this photo will pop up in my feed.
Is that intentional? My wife will need me to ask this. Are you a cat person?
I have cats, but I've had dogs too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I've never had an animal until a couple of years ago. My wife got me a cat right before the pandemic, actually. And I'm in love. We're in love.
Yeah.
It's the best.
So follow. I can't remember the name of the feed, but it's there is no cat in this photo.
Okay.
That's what it is.
Okay. It's just feel good stuff. Right?
It's feel good stuff.
Okay.
And I feel like, it's up to me to curate if I'm going to go into Twitter, I need to curate it so I have a positive experience.
Yeah, good. Okay. So you approach that as like with data, right?
I know. Yeah. There's a data-driven kind of thing.
But also mental health conscious, right?
Yeah.
About social media. Yeah, that's interesting. Do you share that stuff with your students?
I have, because I feel like, and this is something we're going to talk a little bit about at TIP, right? Which is, I feel really disconnected from my students because I haven't had the kind of experience in life that they have. I got my first cell phone when I was in like graduate school. My first computer, much older, but they've grown up with social media the whole time. And I remember when I was teaching social psych part of intro psych, I got through the whole section and I never mentioned social media. And then it occurred to me that a certain percentage of the people my students know, they've never met in person before. And is that kind of social psychology different than people that you know in real life? And I realized I don't know the world in the same way my students do.
Yeah. Connecting with students seems to be a big deal for you from what I know about you. Did you feel like you had instructors who connected with you?
I did.
The Psych Sessions podcast is sponsored by Macmillan Learning Psychology. Introducing Macmillan Learning's Achieve for Psychology, setting a whole new standard for integrating assessments, activities, and analytics into your teaching. Now live in dedicated versions for Macmillan's 2022 psychology titles, Achieve brings together everything instructors and students love about our digital course content, interactive ebooks, learning curve adaptive quizzing, additional assessments, immersive learning activities, extensive instructor resources, and more, all in a powerful yet easy to use new platform. And now, we'd like you to have an exclusive first look and tell us what you think. Go to macmillanlearning.com/psych sessions for your own special preview of Achieve. Macmillan's Achieve for Psychology, engaging every student, supporting every instructor, setting the new standard for teaching and learning.
I feel like, I had a really interesting graduate program. I went there in clinical at Michigan, but it was a very psychodynamic program, but I was one of the only sort of non-psychodynamic sort of oriented people. So I got a good mixture of both. But then I got sort of adopted by the social psych department. And in fact, they called me the clinical orphan. I had an office over in social psych. I knew a lot of the social psych people. I did a lot of research with them. And they took the faculty there took a really strong interest in me, for some reason. My clinical supervisors did. I felt that connection. Yeah. And so I want my students to feel that kind of connection with me because it's more, that connection is more important than the content. Yeah. And it informs the way that you deliver that content too. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you don't care if they get it, right?
Right. Yeah. So do you spend time in your classes with students? How do you kind of bake that value into your courses?
So this last semester, I'm working on a psychopathology textbook right now, and I had my students read the draft of the textbook in Perusal. If you're familiar with Perusal, I learned about Perusal at Psych 1, where students can annotate a document that you upload. And so they were annotating the draft of my textbook.
This sounds familiar. Did you talk about this at Psych 1?
Someone else did. Someone else talked about Perusal as a tool. It's like a social annotation tool that's free. And it's so cool. Okay. Because you can have them add a certain number of annotations per chapter. And I told them, I want you to think about the material, but I also want you to think about how I'm telling you about the material. I want this to be approachable for students. So if I'm using a term that doesn't make sense to you or the example doesn't connect with you, let me know. And put that in the annotations as well. I had to tell the students not to annotate so much because I couldn't keep up with all they were doing. Yeah. In a class of maybe 25 students, each chapter had 250 to 400 annotations.
Oh my gosh.
They loved it. Not the material, but they loved the annotation piece of it. And it gave me a peek into, wait, they're thinking about this. Yeah. Even if in class they're not talking about what they're thinking about. Yeah. It was really amazing.
That's cool. You're giving them such first of all, they're gaining all these skills, right? But students gain skills, but also all this competency, and they get to work with you almost like a colleague for a moment, right? Yeah. Instead of just that student-teacher relationship. Okay, so let's talk abnormal psychopathology. Yeah. You just gave a teaching demo, and I want to talk about names in a moment. Yeah. But my background's counseling psych.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I gotta tell you, I have not found my way to teach abnormal. The text, now I haven't seen every textbook out there, but the traditional way that textbooks work in abnormal has some of the same problem that I have with the traditional way that textbooks work in intro. Yeah. And I do think so. I've used probably 3 different textbooks for abnormal, and what I see is this very predictable pattern.
Yeah.
And so, I don't want to throw you under the bus or anything like that, because I don't know where this is going to go.
I feel like I hear a bus coming. Yeah.
but I, like the critical thinking happens in the early chapters, and then it's just like anxiety disorders, depressive disorders, and then it's just like, and I think this is what our publishers want, because this is what people think they want, because this is the way it's always been done. Right. And so it's really hard for an author, even with fresh ideas, to come in and say, I got a new idea, and they say, that's not going to sell textbooks, because that's not what people are used to. Anyway, so I like to pick on the anxiety. Usually that's like the 4th chapter or whatever. It's like anxiety disorders. And then, in the 4th chapter, it's really long, because we have to cover all the different anxiety disorders, and then all the different kind of perspectives, the psychodynamic and the CBT and the whatever. And then, it just goes on and on and on for students. So, do you resonate with any of that?
Yeah, it's tough, because the elephant in the room is the DSM, right? And so what you're doing is, do you want students to leave with an understanding of these disorders, typically from the DSM's perspective, and so you're sort of forced in some ways to address it in that way, and it's hard to sort of wrangle sort of out of that. So in the book I'm working on, we added a couple things that I think help build it out a little bit more. Yeah. We've got a feature called Power of Words, where we talk about the impact of language on disorders, making sure we look at the fact that culture and systematic things that can happen in environments can sort of lead to more people being diagnosed or seeing disorders in different ways. Also have a feature called Power of Evidence, so looking at sort of evidence-based kinds of things. I've got a cool thing about like lavender for anxiety, about whether or not it helps or not.
Wait, does it help?
No.
Okay. Thanks.
There's a most interesting thing looking at sort of placebo lavender. And so, but it's not strongly enough that it would help someone with intense anxiety.
Right.
Spray some on your pillow might help you sleep a little bit, but probably if you're having panic attacks, it's probably not going to help that much.
So is it the medical model of the DSM kind of puts you into this place?
It's a behemoth, right? Yeah. And especially coming from a counseling perspective, where that's not it's not the snowplow that guides counseling psych, right? But it's the snowplow that tends to drive clinical, right? And so you have this tension and this sort of monster that is crafting how the course is usually structured, but it doesn't mean that there aren't other ways to teach it. And so it goes back to the idea of like, what do you want students to think about 10 years from now, when we're on DSM-7, right? Like what's going to be enduring, in terms of what they're learning? Is it that they remembered that it's these many symptoms for this? Or is it that, hey, certain kinds of symptoms can look like other things.
Yes.
And sometimes those other things are driven by the environments that people are forced to live in. Sometimes those things are driven by the experiences that they have, or driven by their biology, or driven by their culture. And sometimes in that culture, that's fine, and they don't need to change. And so there's a way to embed that sort of meta message within that sort of rigid structure that the DSM sort of provides.
Right. Are you taking over somebody else's title? Is it a new title?
It's a new title.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a new title.
Wow.
Yeah.
How are you doing that?
It's almost done, actually. Tomorrow I'm going out for dinner to celebrate the book going into production.
What?
Yeah.
Who's your publisher?
Cambridge University Press.
Right on, they're here, right?
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was, when people ask me about writing textbooks, and this will be my second textbook, and I'm getting ready to revise an intro book that I have that's with a co-author, Colleen Seifert, who's at Michigan. They're like, why would you do this to yourself? Like, why would you write a book?
That's what I'm thinking.
But writing a textbook's like going on a really, really long road trip. Like, you kind of know where you're headed, and if you're patient enough, you'll get there.
Oh, that sounds like a nightmare to me. Isn't that so interesting?
What's the road trip or the textbook?
Just writing a textbook. No, I love road trips, but writing a textbook, yeah, I mean, all sorts of imposter stuff would probably come up for me, but I also just think that the grind, I mean, it's a long time. It's
like, I drove here from Atlanta. And if I thought about the fact that it was going to take 8 hours or 9 hours, that would take away the journey, right?
Yeah.
The journey is, we're enjoying the time in the car.
Yeah,
right?
I guess you would have to enjoy it, which I may not. I don't know.
Yeah, and so when I'm writing really well and I like what I'm writing, I do enjoy it. But I can spend like 3 days reading about like mirror neurons, and then I end up like writing like 2 sentences, right? And so at some point at some point the party's got to start, right? Yep. And so at some point you've got to say to yourself, I have this amount of time to get through this chapter, and then then we have to move on. And that's what writing a textbook's like. Like, there are moments that I enjoy, like, writing a whole section about neurodiversity in that chapter, learning about that, reading articles, but knowing that the party's, I got to get this to my editor or she's going to kill me.
How do you deal with like finding information, like citations, and how do you stay up to date and on everything?
Yeah. And so I asked some graduate students to help me with that process, to help sort of go through like what's fairly recent. I wanted to make sure we got something that was focused on sort of diverse populations as well. And then just to think about like what are the classic studies that need to be covered, or do they need to be covered? But luckily with this class, the DSM provides the big structure, like which is a good thing and a bad thing. Yeah. But it does give you some. That's why it's a road trip. Like, you kind of know where you're going. When I wrote my book on the psychology of thrill seeking, that's like off-roading. You have no idea where the book's going to end up. And that was a lot. That was harder than writing a textbook.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. What was that like? Was that more of a creative process for you then?
It was more of a creative process, and I wasn't sure what the product was supposed to look like.
But, okay. But you wrote a prospectus for it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you had some, or was it hard before then? And then how close did you stay to that?
The whole thing was hard, right?
Okay. Yeah.
The whole thing was hard because I had this whole idea came back from, there's like a body of literature about sensation seeking, which is to me a fascinating thing that there hasn't been a lot of sort of popular research about. But it's a fairly tight, well researched area. And so I thought, you could read everything on that topic and become an expert on that topic. And I'm not a thrill seeker at all. And I'm really interested in other people's experiences. So I wanted to know, like, what did they, what are people who are, thrill seekers? How do they see the world? And so as part of this, sort of driven by my sort of passion to understand the world through other people's eyes. But I had no idea what it was going to end up being like at the end, in terms of what I thought about what high sensation seekers were like or what their experiences were like. So I was sort of writing and discovering and interviewing people all at the same time.
Wow.
And it was tough because I just like the idea of knowing where I'm going.
Yeah.
And textbooks, where it's not a surprise.
Yeah. So, thrill seeking, behavior, you're not a thrill seeker, but what drew you to it?
It's exactly the fact that I am baffled by them. And so I was going to write a book called The Chaos Junkie's Guide to Life, which was going to be a book about how not to be a chaos junkie and keep your life very organized. And then I discovered that there are people who are chaotic because they like chaos. And they like being calm in the midst of chaotic experiences. I'm the opposite. Any little bit of chaos and my cortisol goes through the roof. Yeah. But they are people that get calm in that chaotic. And
when the building's on fire, some people are like, they're wired to calm down during those moments.
I'm calm, follow me, I know what to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's not me.
And when it's not chaotic, they hate it. And so sometimes they create chaos because they are comfortable in the midst of it.
But that's quite a thing to devote so much time and energy to. That's not just like, I find that interesting. I'm not going to write a book on it, right? Is there some part of you that like, I don't know, what is it that you poured years of your life into that book.
It's the same thing, I think, in terms of being a clinician. At the end of the day, I kind of just like a good story.
Yeah.
Like when people ask me about my, why'd you go into clinical psychology? Like, I just like people's experiences. And I want to understand what's going on from their perspective, because I know it's not my own. I remember when I was in undergrad, this is back in the time when you took pictures and cameras, you had to develop the film.
Yeah.
For those of you who are younger than I am, I accidentally developed a roll of film from my roommate. And I looked at the pictures and everybody looked different. And I thought, this is weird. These are not my pictures. And number one, my friends don't look like this to me. Because he had taken the photos.
Oh.
And it made me realize that not only are people have different perspectives, the way that person is brings out other things in other people that they don't bring out when I'm taking pictures of them. And that's always just been fascinating. So part of my passion is to try to view life from other people's perspectives, try to write it down in a story and ask people, did I get this right? Is this how you're seeing things? And to me, the cool part was having people come up to me and say, I read your book and I showed it to my parents and now they feel like they understand me better.
Oh, that's cool.
And like, what's better than that?
Oh, and that's the story you wanted to tell. You wanted to tell an audience what it's like to be one of these folks.
Right. In a non-pathologizing way. Yeah. That it's not, it's a superpower, right? Yeah. It's not like a death wish. And to have someone say, hey, you got this right, to me is the most satisfying part of that writing experience.
Thrill-seeking behavior, this would be like rock climbers?
Free solo kind of people, ice climbers, all of that. I did a quick little thing for NBC Sports where I interviewed race car drivers. 7-year-old me would not believe that this is my life.
Oh, that's so cool.
I'm a first generation college student. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to get into that for sure. But I'm really fascinated now, so I need to ask you more questions about this. So, what about people who gamble? Is that thrill-seeking?
Higher rates of gambling and addictive disorders, including substance use and behavioral addictions, and people that have high sensation-seeking personalities. Yeah. Okay. And it doesn't really matter what kind of substance.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to think of where else. I knew a rock climber. I knew the family of a rock climber. He was quite famous as far as rock climbing goes, from Seattle, and he ended up dying a number of years ago in Argentina on a climb. And he's professional, very professional. But one of the things when I went to a memorial for him with all the rock climbing people there,
wow.
and so you got this like room full of thrill seekers, right?
Yeah,
or whatever. But somebody said like they all plan to die this way. Like that's what one of the guys said. It's like eventually this will get a number of us in this room,
right?
But it's for the love of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's when you were saying that, I was thinking like, what will do it for me? Like, is it going to be French fries? Is it going to be like if I had to choose?
It'll be the heart. Yeah.
Oh. But to me, I've heard them say it's their passion. It's a thing they live. It's lust for life.
Yeah.
And it's a willingness to get hurt or to lose money for the awe that they experience.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, I experience awe from kind of dull stuff like sunrises and the beach.
Yep.
That creates awe for me.
Yeah.
It's not that dangerous and I can fill up on it relatively easily. But for people who get that awe from climbing on tops of buildings or other kinds of things, it's to them, it's worth it. And we need people like them to do things like be first responders and, window washers on skyscrapers. We sort of rely on those. And they're not always the people that you think. They're sometimes the chillest, calmest people. They're not, they can be introverts. They're not these like extra sort of extroverts all the time. Mm-hmm. And so I can spot them a little easier now than I used to be able to.
Interesting. Well, it's because you've interviewed a bunch of them. You got some expertise on it now, right?
Yeah, I'm still terrified. Oh, and a whole area, what I call fearless foodies. People who will just eat almost anything for that cultural experience of being connected to the culture to try the food.
That's interesting. My wife and I travel a bunch internationally, and she is that person.
Yeah.
And she actually really struggles with the mundane in daily life. So she might be one of your people.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'm the opposite. Or like to me, give me a really like craft vanilla ice cream, and I am like all over it. Right?
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah. For me. Like when I'm stressed out, I want to tackle problems. And for her, when she's stressed out, she wants to go to India. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So, okay, that's fascinating.
So I wouldn't be surprised if she would score high on there's thrill and adventure seeking, which is that sort of danger part.
Yep.
But experience seeking is what you're talking about, sort of sensations of the mind and of the senses. So adventure, travel, eating unusual foods. I interviewed a woman for the book that called herself the White Rabbit. She wanted to travel for 300 days without spending any money, just sort of couch surfing on other people's sofas.
Yep. That would be right up my wife's alley. Like, she loves that idea.
Way would I do that. I wouldn't even sleep on the couches of my friends, much less of strangers. Yeah.
Man, you're fascinating. It's great. Okay. So, are we done with that? Let me think if I have any more questions about this. So you've written 3 professional books now. Are you about?
Yeah. So 3? I've written an intro psych book. I've written Buzz, which is a thrill-seeking book. I'm just finishing the psychopathology book with Cambridge, and I'm in the middle of redoing the intro book for a new publisher. Yeah.
Okay. And you have time for the rest of your life?
I do. But in December, I'll be finished up with the intro book, and then I need to sort of reconsider my choices. Like, what do I want to do next? Do I have another book in me? I had an idea for a book, but then I met someone that I thought was a better person to write that book, and it was like, it's yours. I'm not writing this book anymore. It was going to be a book on tricksters, and so people who pretend to be something that they're not. Wait,
what does that mean?
So I binge watched a bunch of like Catfish on MTV, and like really soon I'm not sure if you've seen the show before. So people who are sort of faking being a person online, and they have a relationship with somebody else, and the other person thinks, I think this person isn't this person, and they finally meet, and it's never that person, right? And everybody can tell, right? But the person who is being catfished, for some reason, is blind to it. And so I think there's something to people who want to be tricked, and also there's something that the person who's tricking is getting out of that experience. But I met another psychologist who this is her sort of research area, and she has so many terrifying, terrible stories of people who've been tricked in different kinds of ways. And it's like, this is your book. And so I think, So
is the audience, or I'm sorry, is the main character in this book, the characters, are they the tricksters or the tricked?
Both. Okay. I'm fascinated by both of them.
And it's the psychology of it. So it's like, it's not the it's not the MTV version where it's just watching the story, but it's like,
it's
why?
how do you not know this? Like, how can you not see this?
Like, what's going on? What kind of defenses are in?
Yeah. There's a I can't remember all the details of the story. There was a documentary I watched about this family whose son went missing. And a couple years later, this person turns up and is like, "Hey, I'm your son that went missing." And it's obviously not their son. Like, it's the wrong age, this the wrong race. Like, there's no way. And he moved into their house.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay. It might just be that I'm away from my wife right now for a few days, but she would love this. I mean,
yeah.
Whatever you do, I just have to. I got to turn her. I've got to hand her over to somebody else who has better thoughts than I do, because I can't connect with her on these things. So I'll just have her read all your stuff.
Have her watch that documentary.
Oh
she'll love it. And you're watching like this. They cannot be really believing this is their son. Yeah.
Okay. Hold on. We've never done this on the podcast. I'm going to text her right now. I'm going to say, "Have you seen Catfish?" Because sometimes she watches things.
Oh yeah, it's not meant for 50-year-olds like me. It's on MTV, but I can't stop watching Catfish on MTV. Yeah.
On MTV.
And I'll find the other name of the documentary. I'll text it to you.
Okay, fantastic. So do you know that book's being written by your colleague?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. She reached out to me because she was interested in my experience in writing sort of a popular book or kind of a crossover. So Buzz is sort of a crossover book. It's like an academic book, but it can be read and understood by sort of non-academics. And so she reached out to me and I gave her some of my experience in terms of what I had done to sort of prepare for that sort of public scholarship world. And she seemed really excited. And I said, "I will read anything you want me to, any way I can help you to. I'll be your cheerleader. But I'm not going to write this book. You're going to write this book." And I'm at the point in my career where I don't need it for my career.
Yeah.
I'm doing it because it's a passion. So after the intro book is done, we'll see if there's another book in me. If not, I mean, that's 7-year-old me would be still amazed that I had written 3 books.
Yeah. Well, and now you got to revise at least 2 of those.
There's that part, and so we'll see. Yeah, but it's been a really amazing experience.
That's cool. How do you organize your time for writing, teaching, all your other things that you have going on in your life?
I am one of those slow burn people where I can do I'll do an hour's worth of work. And if I'm going to do an hour, I need to do these things and I'll pick up tomorrow with another hour. I don't have to sit down and do it all at once. And so, I told myself, I have a little time today. I know what 3 or 4 things that I want to get done. And then I can pick up from where I left off tomorrow.
And you must have some laser focus then to do that.
I mean, maybe, but I'm the kind of person I know when things aren't good. And so I know when it's good enough to torture my editor with, or when I just need to, buckle down and get something done. That's the other thing about textbooks. There are lots of short sections in textbooks. You can work on one task, 4 different times and kind of clean things up. But for me, at least, the heavy duty writing part for both of those projects is done. Where I'm at the tweaking point now. Yeah.
That's so fun. Let's get back into your backstory a little bit. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina, but I was born in Charlevoix, Michigan, which is the very top of the lower peninsula of Michigan. Stayed there for 2 months. My dad was in the Air Force at the time. And then we grew up in Columbia. Like I said before, first generation college student. My dad graduated from. My mom graduated from high school. My dad didn't. My dad went in the military. Older brother who went to the military too. When I talked to my parents about going to college, they were like, "Oh, it had never occurred to them that I might be going to college."
So, Mom didn't go to college. Obviously,
Mom did not. No, not to go to college.
I have the same story. My dad did not finish high school. Yeah. And my mom did. And neither college educated. So South Carolina. I've been to South Carolina once. A couple times. And wow, that's a really interesting place.
Yeah. I was a public school, but we had a really great, and thinking back to like learning to teach, I was in speech and debate in high school. And I had a really bad stuttering problem when I was in elementary school. So the idea that I would do speech and debate in high school, which wasn't supposed to happen. But I did a lot of sort of speaking, events in high school. And that's when I sort of got sort of connected with the people who were thinking about like going to college.
Yeah.
And that was that experience that taught me how to organize my thoughts, think on my feet, organize how I speak, but also to sort of double down on my passion for learning. Even though neither of my parents went to college, school was very important to them. And they don't know what my day is like. Like when I explain to them like what I do and how I teach, and I'm not sure if it fully connects with them, but I know that they are proud of what I do and really supportive.
Yeah. What was it like to stutter as a child, and what did that do for like just your sense of like competence academically or whatever, because you're so accomplished. And maybe that's not a fair question. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. So it was tough because I felt I don't like the spotlight, even still. Okay. I don't like, I don't know how much of that's because I'm introverted or how much of it's because I grew up stuttering and people would get frustrated with me because I couldn't get out what I was trying to say. So it was better for me just not to say anything. And I was sort of comfortable with that. But I was also told I wasn't a good writer, so I wasn't sure how I was supposed to connect with the world.
You weren't a good writer?
And
who do we need to call?
This is like third grade me, right?
Sure.
Right.
But a teacher?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so...
And that stuck with you?
I remembered it. Yeah. And so getting to the point where I feel like I could communicate orally and also in written... And to feel confident about that is something, again, 7-year-old me would be like, you do what for a living?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, so 7-year-old you, quiet kid, has been told that they're not a good writer, is quiet because of a stuttering problem.
Right.
And so that's often who you return to thinking about, right? When you're now like reflecting back on things. Yeah.
Which is probably one of the reasons why I think it's important for me to understand my students' experience and how they're experiencing what I'm doing. Yeah. Because I think I was just sort of hiding in the back.
What turned the corner for you when you were 8 and on? You know, was there a teacher? Did something happen internally where you just gained some like, and I don't know much about stuttering and why it happens and then how people, because I do know that people kind of get over it, right?
Yeah, I may have grown out of it. It may be sort of linked to anxiety for me as a kid. Probably my speech and debate coach, who I've not been able to find to do a gratitude letter for, and I don't even know if he's still around. But Hal Brooks was his name, and we would, I ended up being president of the speech and debate team when I was a senior, and we would travel around the country. Like we had a van and there were maybe 10 of us, and we would go to these speech events all over the country. And it was terrifying, but it was also something that was amazingly, satisfying.
Yeah. How did they pay for that? Like
we would sell donuts.
Really? That's a lot of donuts.
We would sell donuts, and we would like have like fundraisers.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like mom and dad weren't just paying for you to go
They
around.
paid for some of it.
Okay, sure.
And then I had a job my junior and senior year of high school.
Yeah.
I worked in a computer store, Computerland, for those of you who are. But that was the thing that turned the corner for me. That sort of taught me that I could reach out and communicate to people.
Yeah. Well, that has paid forward for you, I think. That's cool to hear about that experience kind of shifting some things for you.
Yeah.
So at that point, did you always like school, or at that point did it change things for you? So
I always loved school.
Okay.
I always loved school. I felt safe at school. I felt sort of taken care of at school.
Yeah.
I felt that I was also in like a talented and gifted program where we went around doing really cool things and sort of being encouraged to be like in your head. Yeah. And as an introvert, in my head's like one of my favorite places to be. And so it was great to have encouragement to think. And now I have a job where I think and I write and I tell other people about what I'm thinking and writing. And that's what I do for a living.
Yeah. When did you realize that you were good at academics, at learning, at like to continue on to go to college, or maybe what led to college for you?
I don't know. It was the funny thing was, so I went back and I ended up getting a second master's in clinical psychopharm. So it's a degree that some people can get that would allow them to prescribe in different states. And I don't think I knew how much I knew about learning until I did that second master's, which I got after my PhD. And I think I was a really good student at that point. This was probably in like 2000. Okay. And so I think it wasn't until then that I felt like, hey, I can do this. For me, graduate school felt like a long shot. I didn't know if I would even get in. Yeah. College was, tough, in terms of, being able to succeed in it. But I think now I understand how I learn and how I can, and I feel like that has helped me connect with my students too, because, it was after I was teaching that I ended up doing that second master's, and it helped me to sort of connect with my students in a new way.
Yeah. How did you choose Oxford College to go to? Oh, yeah. I remember they had a recruiter that came to my high school, and I remember there was these words that made me want to apply. They said, we can get as many nerds as we want, but we want people who can make a difference in the world. Oh, that's really cool.
And I'm like, I know I don't have the best grades, but I feel like I want to make a difference in the world.
Did you not have the best grades?
I didn't have the best grades.
Yeah, sure.
I wasn't. There were like the college prep classes and then the honors classes. Yeah. I was more of a college prep kind of kid. I took 2 AP classes that were in history, and most of the other classes were like college prep.
Yeah.
And I got decent grades, not the very best grades, but knowing that there was a place for people that didn't have the best grades, but that would want to make a difference, was a thing for me. But Oxford's changed since then. It used to be this place where the diamonds in the rough would go to be able to be prepared to go to Emory College. It's not that kind of place anymore. It's very much more of a liberal arts intensive place. But it was a place for me that helped me to be able to hone my academic skills that I don't know if I would have been as successful if I had gone somewhere else.
Yeah. Okay. So you got accepted to Oxford. You applied other places too?
I applied early decision. Okay. And I applied to 2 colleges. Oh, okay. And I found out that I got into Oxford very early, and then I was like, that's it. That's where I'm going to go.
Yeah. Okay. So then an undergraduate degree in psychology?
Undergrad, major in psychology, no minor, no double major, just
and you
psych.
Knew you wanted to go psych?
I knew I wanted to be a psychologist ever since I was in 5th grade.
Why is that?
I'm sure I had no idea what a psychologist was. Of course. But I knew that psychologists, I had always been told I was a good listener, and I like stories. Yeah. And to me, 5th grade me thought that's what a psychologist does.
Yeah. Okay. So it wasn't the helping people thing so much?
Yeah, the helping people part too. Yeah, okay. Yeah. But being a good listener and being able to help people by listening. Yeah. The idea that you could help people by listening was what a 5th grade version of me thought that that's what you did. There was a power.
What psychologists, when you were kind of studying, especially clinically, what psychologists or therapists, is there one that kind of resonated with you where you were like, I liked learning from that person?
Oh gosh. It was probably Chris Peterson. So learning about the attributional style and how the way that you think can impact the way you experience the world was really interesting to me. And the idea that you would also use that not just with people that had depression or anxiety, but you could also use that to help people to be happy, was something that was fascinating to me as well. And so that's probably, the fact that I got into Michigan, the fact that I was able to work with him was a tremendous experience. And then a lot of my clinical stuff when I was there, I did a lot of my internship in primary care areas, working with physicians. And so not the main traditional kind of area for clinicians, but for people who were going to the clinic for other reasons, but so they needed a consult from a psychologist. Yeah. I was the person to help with that kind of stuff.
All right, just a couple more questions. Make a difference that got you, that was really appealing to you, to make a difference in the world. To make a difference in the world? Is that what they said, Emory? Yeah, okay, yeah. So what was it about that resonated with you?
Just the idea that you could impact the world in a positive way, that one person can impact the world in a positive way.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the reason why I like to write, is that there are people that are reading what I've written that I don't even know that they've read or have seen something that I've done, and something good can come from it. Feels like a really powerful way to be in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to me, I'm at a place where that's really valued, and that is a gift.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. Well, I would say that you are making a difference, and I just know by the way that you from the little I know about you, you bring, now it's making a lot more sense to me. You do bring that positive kind of spirit into the room. I think it's even on Twitter when you post. There's a lot of ways to be. Yeah. There's a lot of ways to give a talk, to make a post or whatever. Right. And so it's nice when I really appreciate personally when it is positive, it is making a difference. So it's cool that you found a place that is aligned, that was so well aligned with how you are in the world as well. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like I checked off all the boxes of things I wanted to do earlier than I thought. Yeah. And now it's time to sort of figure out like what I want to do next. Yeah. And so one of the lessons of the pandemic, for me is, it sort of pressed reset in a lot of ways. And now I want to make some really conscious decisions about how I want to fill my time. Yeah. And maybe it just doesn't all have to be filled.
Sure.
And so I think that's a piece that's happening next for me.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think my final question is, how did you get connected to this current kind of group of teachers of psychology? How long have you been in this world for?
Wow. And so my first NITOP was probably in like 95 or 96 or something like that. And so I'd been going every other year for a while. It was one of my favorite conferences because, and if people are listening who haven't been before, it is like a big intellectual hug. You can walk up to anyone, ask people questions. It's been amazing. And I was really happy we were able to do it in the midst of the pandemic in a really safe way. And then 2 years ago, I did a talk here on psychology of thrill seeking and how to use that as a theme, because I use it in my class to teach personality theories as well as some things about neuroscience. And then they approached me, the conference committee approached me and asked me if I would want to be on the conference planning committee, which was the second biggest surprise I had after being invited to do the first talk. And so, now
you're on the conference.
Now I'm on the conference steering committee. Yeah. It's been amazing. And so it's an awesome, it's one of my favorite conferences for sure. Yeah. Well, next to yours, next to
mine. Thank you. Yeah. Well, I look forward to, because, it's interesting how the NITOP world and the STP world, they overlap a little, but like not a bunch, because I think that it's just hard to go to commit to
Right.
2 national conferences, or whatever. But I have a feeling we're going to be hearing from you a lot more. For you, I think you're going to, I don't know how involved you have been in STP. Have you been?
Some.
Okay.
I'm trying to get a bit more involved in it.
Well,
yeah.
I have a feeling that we're about to see you. I don't know. I don't know how STP will. STP will utilize your skills if you want them to, because you bring a lot. It's awesome.
Thank you. And I'm excited about what I'm planning on for your conference.
Cool.
And so,
I look forward to it, and we'll try to maybe we'll even try to record it for folks and put it on the podcast.
That'd be great. I'd love that.
Talk about it. So, Ken Carter, thank you very much for your time.
This is a pleasure. Thank you.